Thank you so much for coming on the show. How is it going?
It's going well. Thank you for having me, Oscar. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. If you could really quickly ask all my guests this, I know who you are, but and in your own words, can you tell me who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Suzie Blake,
Mhm.
and I am the Director of Development for the Children's Grief Center and the Grief Resource Center here in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay, okay, that's quite a role, huh?
Yeah, it's a very fancy title for fundraiser.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, so I mean, is it an easy job? Would you say it's a tough job?
It depends on your
Hmm.
personality and your passion.
Gotcha.
Organization that I work for, the Children's Grief Center. I've always been involved with organizations that help support children. And so that's
Mm.
where my heart is. And when your heart's in something, it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, that's kind of a great kind of segue. It sounds like you've been doing very similar stuff for a while. Where, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a small town in upstate New York called
Okay,
New Paltz. So
okay,
Newpaltz. I think that people who might be familiar with Poughkeepsie or Woodstock would
uh
then
huh.
kind of understand what area of the state I came from. So that's where I grew up. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And a quick question that I ask all New Yorkers is where does upstate start? Because
I don't think that
I
it
get a
depends on
different
who you
answer.
ask.
Yes, exactly. And I'm asking you,
Um,
Susie.
I don't know. I mean, for me, it's like I'm 90 miles north of New York City. I think once
Mm.
you get away from where the subways can take you, then I guess you're upstate.
Okay, because yeah, I heard somebody say, "Well, this line goes just past Yonkers," and so it's. I mean, I've heard people say Buffalo, and that's practically Canada already. So it
Yeah,
varies.
that's a
Okay,
that's pretty far upstate. Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. And
So
then, so you've. I remember from having conversations with you, you moved around mostly for school, and then other stuff, right? What
hmm
did you study in college?
I left New York
Mm-hmm.
after I graduated from high school and
Mm-hmm.
went out to Oregon State University in
Mm-hmm.
Corvallis.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we have our Oregon connection. And
Yeah, yeah.
I was on the track team at Oregon State.
Oh,
And yeah, so I was a high jumper, and my Bachelor of Science is in physical education with an emphasis on what they call commercial and industrial physical fitness. Again, another fancy title for working in health clubs or setting up fitness programs in corporations, doing fitness testing at hospitals, that kind of thing.
okay. All right. That's really awesome stuff.
Yeah.
How often have you used that?
Well, when I so when I got out of school, I
Uh-huh.
actually did go to work. Well, I did an internship at a fitness center in Corvallis, and then I did go to
Mm,
work at a fitness club in Portland, Oregon.
mm,
And so I
mhm.
was with them for about a year or so, and then I went to work for a brand new. Up and coming weight loss company called Jenny Craig. I'm kind of
Oh.
dating myself, and
Gotcha.
because I had a background in exercise and in nutrition, I was
Mm,
able
mhm.
to be hired by them and was a trainer for their weight loss counselor for a number of years.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
That's very interesting. So, I mean, that seems very different than what you're doing right now, right?
yeah.
Um, how where did that transition happen? Where did that kind of change, the
Well,
shift?
the transition came, and this is not in any way meant to shed a bad light on
Mhm.
the for-profit world, but
Mhm.
I came to a point where I was all about wanting to help people reach their
Mm,
goals, be
mhm.
successful,
Mhm.
get the help and the support that they needed. And I just found that there was more of an emphasis on sales than I
Mhm.
want it. And so I decided that I wanted to go into the nonprofit sector so that
Mhm.
I could continue to keep kind of fulfilling my passion and helping others, but not necessarily have, so to speak, the pressure or the sales pitch. And so I
So
left.
fundraising,
Yes,
huh?
I know. People are probably scratching their heads saying, "Isn't that the same thing?" Yes and no.
Mhm.
But I shifted from working
Sure.
for profit to actually working for the American Red Cross in Portland, Oregon,
Okay. Okay.
and that was my first role in the nonprofit world. And
Mhm.
what was unique about that position was I worked in donor services. And so that's the group, the department with Red Cross that helps set up blood drives. And
Mhm.
so all of our goals were measured
Mhm.
in pints of blood. So I wasn't raising money, I was raising blood because the hospitals have a need for blood and they have to get it from somewhere,
Mhm.
and they need a
Yeah.
certain level. They need it, you know. And
Mhm.
so my role was to go out and set up blood drives throughout the community that I was involved with and make sure that we were bringing in the amount of blood that we needed to serve the hospitals in the Portland community.
Okay, so it's like some project management, some event kind of
Oh yeah. Yeah,
creation, stuff like that, right?
volunteer recruitment, event
Mhm.
planning,
Mhm.
logistics,
Mhm.
bringing new businesses on board, new,
Mhm. Mhm.
places that would do blood drives. So we did everything from Intel to really small high schools. So it was a variety of places that helped to support us with blood drives.
Did that sort of kind of work come easily to you?
It did. I just
Okay.
really enjoyed being able to get out into the community and meet people,
Mm, mhm.
and talk about the need that we had for blood,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
kind of getting them engaged in how they can help support the effort. And I think that that was very rewarding, not only for myself but
Mhm.
for them as well. So it's kind of that win-win situation that you always hear about.
That's really great. That's really awesome. I mean, and so what brought you down to New Mexico?
A personal relationship, and that's as far as I'll take it. So,
No, of course.
actually, I had to stop from or between Oregon and New
Mhm, mhm,
Mexico. I actually moved to Michigan and
mhm.
lived in Grand Rapids for a number of years, where I continued in
Oh,
the
that's right.
nonprofit sector. I worked for the Boy Scouts, the March of
Mhm.
Dimes, a local public museum, as well as the local NPR and PBS station. And
That's
so
amazing work. You've done a lot.
yeah, I have.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know what? The skill set is pretty much the same. It's about building relationships,
Uh-huh.
thanking
Mhm,
people for their support, making sure that people are aware of
mhm,
what the mission is and how
mhm.
important it is. And then, just trying to have a plan in place to make all of that happen.
Yeah, okay, and that makes absolute sense. So let's, like, kinda shift over to what you're doing now. Um, so with this organization, what have you noticed as far as what kind of drew you to it, and what parts of the organization do you feel like, um, you're proud of, I guess?
Wow.
Mhm,
I think that there are a lot of people in the nonprofit world,
mhm,
if asked this question, would say after coming out of 2020, I'm just proud of the fact that the team pulled together, and that
mhm, mhm,
even though, what our organization does at the Children's Grief Center and the Grief Resource Center is we provide peer support group um, services for those that are grieving the loss of a loved one. So, in
mm,
other words, we serve children
mhm,
from littles to middles, teens, tweens, and
mhm.
young adults, so ages 5 to 25.
Okay.
And they're in a group of other kids in their same age,
Mhm,
working with a bereavement counselor. And
mm,
what that bereavement counselor does is, facilitator does, is that they help. Uh, lead the conversation and help the kids just process the grief and give them an opportunity to share their stories, because
Mm,
if they didn't have if they don't have that kind of support, what can happen is it can lead to some lifelong consequences.
yeah, yeah.
And so we just provide this free service where not only kids but adults can get together with others who have gone through a similar situation and just understand how they're feeling and know that it's natural, and also know different ways on how to cope with that grief, so that if and when the next death comes,
Mhm.
that they're a little bit better prepared, and they have a little more mental health in
Yeah.
their tool belt, some better coping skills. And so
Mhm.
we were in person, that's what we
Yeah.
do. We were in
Yeah.
person. And so when COVID
Yeah.
hit, everything
Mhm.
had to shift to online. And so
Mm.
I'm really proud of the fact that the volunteers, and we have over 100 volunteers that help
Mhm.
us do this. We really couldn't do the work without them. And
Yeah.
our staff, we have a very
Mhm.
small team. There's only
Mhm.
6 of us. Um, the program team really pulled together and made sure that there was not any hiccups in the
Mhm.
services that we were providing to those families, because it's very important that they have that support, that continual support.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I think for me, it's just, again, being able to help people
Mhm.
in their time of need and just give them the ability to have some resources and understanding about what's going on in their life,
Mhm.
so that, hopefully down the road, they're okay, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a very, very good and as altruistic as possible work. It's I think
Mhm.
it's important work as well.
Right.
You mentioned a little bit of it, obviously with going virtual, but what are some of the other challenges the organization has faced over this last year?
We moved.
You moved,
So,
okay,
that's a big challenge.
like
So,
physical spaces, right? Yeah.
yeah. So, we're actually in our 20th year of
Oh wow. Okay.
providing services,
Mm-hmm.
and during that time, we've been in a variety of different locations that have been leased.
Mm-hmm.
And so a few years ago, the leadership of the organization felt that it was time for us to have our own facility, our own
Mm-hmm.
permanent location.
Sure.
And they went out and purchased a building that had been used as a former radio station here
Mm-hmm.
in Albuquerque, and started raising funds for the capital campaign to make the renovations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at the end of December, our lease was up where we were,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't going to be renewed. And we felt like it was now time for us to move into the new location, even though it wasn't anywhere near complete.
Mhm, mhm.
So we got enough figured out. So we got some heat, some water, some Wi-Fi, and some electricity, and
The
a couple of
basics.
toilets. And we moved in at the end of December. Now, I guess if there is a silver lining for COVID and for the
Yeah.
pandemic, the fact that we were online allowed us the ability to move into the facility,
Mm,
knowing that we weren't going to be serving anyone in person for a while. And since the staff was really
sure.
working from home, um, a lot of us weren't in the office
Mhm,
as well. So
mhm.
our challenge right now is to continue to raise funds so that we
Mm,
can complete the renovation of the building. We're increasing the size of the building of so we have a lot
yeah.
more space to serve our families. We went from 7,000 square feet to almost 13,000 square feet.
Oh, wow.
Uh, yeah, and we're also
Mhm,
going to be housing about there's 5 offices for
mhm.
wellness practitioners.
Mm.
So therapists, massage therapists, acupuncturists, those offices will be for lease.
Oh,
And then
wow.
we also
Okay.
will have 3
Mhm,
spaces for similar nonprofit organizations. So like suicide
mm,
prevention, that kind of
mhm,
thing.
mhm.
So there's organizations out there that just don't have the ability to rent or own a large space. So by having an office in our facility called the Center for Hope and Healing, they will have access to our conference rooms and things like that at a real reasonable rate. So the idea behind the Center for Hope and Healing is it's not just for our services, but it's for other nonprofit providers as well as therapists that can help our families and also run their practice during the day. And and
Wow.
bottom line, since I'm a fundraiser, it helps us pay our bills too.
Well,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. Yeah, that makes absolute sense. At the
Mhm.
end of the day, it's the nonprofit organizations have to figure a lot out on a small budget,
Yeah.
and it really depends on the goodness and again the altruism of a lot of other people, right? And wanting to help or give in whatever
Right.
way. And I will say volunteer work is great. I'm never going to deter anybody from volunteering, but um, money helps pay the bills. So
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So
And
that mhm,
I'm sorry. I was going to say,
no,
and we don't have, I guess in scale,
hmm
we would be considered a small nonprofit. Our annual budget
hmm
is a little
hmm
more than $500,000.
hmm
And so I feel like we get a lot accomplished
yeah,
for that
yeah,
amount. And again, going back to volunteers,
hmm
all of our bereavement facilitators are volunteers, and they come from all walks of life.
mm,
And so they're the ones that are running the actual support groups, and we offer 18 of those throughout the week. So it's
hmm
great that we have them. We couldn't do it
hmm
without them. It yeah, that we just
yeah.
wouldn't be able to support a payroll that could do that. So
Yeah, absolutely. It requires, it takes a village sort of thing, right?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's a very important thing, especially when you're providing such important services to the community here in New Mexico on the larger scale, and then Albuquerque more local, right?
Mhm.
But it's not just Albuquerque that you provide services to, right?
No, we are the only
Mm,
grief
mhm,
serving organization that's specifically just as focused on providing grief support in central New Mexico. But one of the
mhm,
things that we learned
mhm,
and we found with being online is that we did have a broader reach, and we had
hmm,
folks joining us for our grief support services from Colorado and Texas
mhm,
and other
mhm.
parts of New Mexico. So we see that as a continuing component of our services. We'll probably do that more so with the adult programs that we have, and
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes, and then possibly incorporate it back into the children's program if it's working well.
Mhm, mhm. So
Yeah.
it sounds like, you say it's the only, right? So what, that makes you pretty unique.
Well, yes, it does. There is another grief serving organization in the state
Hmm.
of New Mexico out of
Mhm.
Santa Fe,
Okay.
Gerard's House. And there's a lot of other organizations, churches,
Mhm. Mhm.
hospitals that will provide kind of grief workshops and networks and courses and groups, but we're strictly focused on grief, so we don't work with any other um, concerns or have any other components to
Mm.
our program. We're
Mhm.
focused on serving the grieving community.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And it sounds like maybe you've been working overtime with the pandemic as well, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
statistically, just to give you an idea,
Yeah.
New Mexico, up until recently, was fourth in the nation when it comes to childhood bereavement. And so
Mm.
that's a child under the age of 18 who's experienced the death of either a parent or a sibling. And so it's an
Mm.
immediate family member and it's not an aunt or uncle or grandparent.
Mhm. Mhm.
Unfortunately, we moved up in the rankings and we're now
Yeah.
second
Yeah.
in the nation.
Wow. Okay.
And so, you know, nationally, over 40,000 children have experienced the loss of a parent caretaker
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
COVID. And so, yes, there's been a lot of grief.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that it's also become, and again, in a strange way, if there's a blessing
Yeah.
to the pandemic, the
Yeah.
fact that it has put grief out there, and made it
Mm-hmm.
more public and made
Mm-hmm.
it more acceptable.
Right. Right.
And as a society, if you think about it, and different cultures work with grief differently,
Absolutely.
but we're always kind of told to, not talk about it, or we
Mm.
don't talk about it with children because we want to protect them.
Right.
Where we need to talk about it, we need to
Mm.
express how we're feeling, and know that we're not alone. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
absolutely. I couldn't speak more highly of of this organization, obviously, but it speaking to kind of the fact that healing as a whole, so the society needs to heal, right? Especially when it comes to our next generation and these children,
right.
because that it is in fact a trauma gets internalized if it's not addressed, and then it comes out in
Mhm.
very strange ways, right? It comes out sideways later on
Yeah.
in life, and I mean, who knows what the long-term impacts of this trauma is it's going to be, right? So we need organizations like this.
Right. So what
Mm-hmm.
we do is try to help them understand what they're going through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Children, I mean,
Mm.
children grieve differently than adults do.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
can't grieve alone. Adults, we can kind of,
Yeah.
we've had some life experience under
Mm-hmm.
our belt.
Mm-hmm.
And if we choose to hold everything in and not talk about
Mhm.
it, then that's our
Mhm.
choice. But for kids, they just don't have an understanding, particularly the young ones, about what's going on. I mean, their whole world has just been turned upside down. And
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
times we say that children are magical thinkers. They will create the story of what
Mhm.
happened, and it's
Mhm.
not, oh, and it's usually not the right story. And
Mm.
so a lot of times they'll say things like, if I had just worked harder on my homework, my dad wouldn't have had a heart attack. Or if I
Mm.
hadn't, been
It's
playing
heavy.
soccer, my mom wouldn't have died in that car accident.
Oof.
You
They'll
know, so
internalize it. Yeah.
so they internalize it and they create a story that's not true. And so by talking about it and getting those things out and sharing it with others, they
Mhm.
learn that, death is natural,
Mhm.
and that
Mhm.
what they are feeling is natural,
Yeah.
and that it's okay to grieve, and that things are going to be okay.
Mhm.
Um, and
Mhm.
so, because if we don't address the grief, we know
Yeah.
statistically there's increased chances of suicide, substance abuse,
Yeah.
behavioral challenges like anxiety and depression,
Mhm.
and dropping out of high school. So
Mhm.
it does have a long-term impact, not only for the individual but for our society as well,
Mhm.
if you
Mhm.
think about it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
an important service. And
Mhm.
I'm, you're talking about what am I proud of? That's what I'm really proud of, is the fact that, you know, somebody can call us
Mhm.
and we will talk with them to get them, kind of on board, make sure that this is the right program for them,
Mhm.
and then have them go through an orientation so they definitely know what this is all about,
Mhm.
how the program works, and then get them started. And then they can
Mhm.
stay with us as long as they want to.
Yeah.
We're not going to kick them out after 20 groups or anything like that. So, um,
That's very, I mean, very good work. And I think to give a little background on like how I think, or my understanding of how people sometimes approach grief with children is that they think that yeah, they're protecting them by not telling them the truth, right?
right.
And like you said, they're magical thinkers. They make up the story, and for the listener, I mean, I'm not sure if the people listening or watching this are aware, but all your memory is a story you tell yourself over and over and over again, right?
Hmm.
So if you tell it enough, it will become real to you, right?
Yeah.
And it creates this narrative, and you perpetuate it. And I mean, there's a ton of psychology behind it,
Yeah.
but the point is that children really are capable of understanding these things,
Mhm.
despite how many people don't believe so. They think that they're too fragile. So they make up these stories and tell people or tell children, they
Right.
left, or I don't know, whatever. When in reality, it is very important, right? And I could speak to it because my children have lost family close to them and myself, and
Mhm.
and having to expose a child to that, it's never easy, but it's an important thing to do,
Yeah, it
right?
is. And, you know,
Hmm.
and we want to be able to give
Hmm.
the kids kind of tools on how to
Hmm.
be okay in the
Hmm.
outside world,
Yeah.
with others, because,
Yeah. Hmm.
going back to school after a parent or a sibling has
Hmm.
died can be really
Hmm.
hard, and they need to know how to be able to handle that. You know, other kids may want to make them feel okay, by
Hmm.
saying something like, I know how you feel. My dog died,
Hmm.
but it isn't the same. And you can't replace, you can replace the pet, but you can't replace the parent or the
Yeah.
sibling or
Yeah.
whatever. And so
Hmm.
we help them kind of work through all of that.
Hmm.
Part of what we also do is we provide training, bereavement facilitator training and training to social workers and clergy and
Hmm.
school counselors and
That's awesome.
EMT and firefighters and
Hmm.
chaplains, because sometimes they're the first on the scene,
Hmm.
or they're
Hmm.
obviously in touch. They're a part of that village that is surrounding that child,
Hmm.
and giving them the ability to understand how to approach grief with children is really important. Um,
Yeah.
so we provide
Hmm.
that training as well for the community, and we also have a library with
Hmm.
free resources. And so if people
That's
are
amazing.
interested in some of that, we have that available as well too. So,
Hmm.
the bottom line is that children are going to be curious, and
Hmm.
they're going to want to know what's going on. And when we tell
Hmm.
them something like, your dad's gone to heaven, that's still too open ended. They're thinking, well, when is dad going to come back from heaven?
They
And
think they start making heaven a real place where they can visit,
yeah,
right? I
yeah,
think that's a thing, which is just regardless of your belief system, it's not, it's not
right,
something you want to kind of create in the child
right.
early on.
Yeah, so you just have to be
Yeah.
really truthful and factual with them in an age
Hmm.
appropriate way,
Yeah.
obviously. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but explain to them, that they have died. They're
Hmm.
no longer in pain. They can't feel anything, but they're still with you in your mind, and all love all
Yeah.
the memories. And really, the best thing
uh,
for what people should be doing when they're
yeah.
talking to a child
Yeah.
is to share with them the stories and the memories that they have of the person who
uh,
passed away, because that's what kids want to hear. They
hmm.
want to know that grandpa grew the best tomatoes in town, and they want to
Yeah.
know that,
Yeah.
mom was an
Hmm.
amazing volunteer at
Hmm.
for animals. And so those are the things. That's how we should treat children when we come across them when they're grieving.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's a lot of people feel like they have to do this alone. There's resources, right? That's why you're such a vital part of
Absolutely.
this community. Is not just because it's you're helping parents maybe with their children, or children in general. Um, you're really providing the service when death is a, in fact a part of life.
Yeah.
And so it's something that we can't run from, and it's as a society we've become very avoidant of the topic,
Yeah.
um, and
Yeah.
fearful of it, when in fact we really shouldn't be. As it's easier said than done, of course.
Right,
you
right.
know
Yeah, and you brought up
hmm.
a good point. So our services do reach all ages and stages, and so
Hmm.
obviously families are coming to us with their children, and then
Hmm.
there's support groups that are available for the parents as well.
Hmm.
And then we
Hmm.
also offer adult support groups. So we merged back in 2019 with the Grief
Hmm.
Resource Center, who was
Hmm.
doing similar work with adults.
Hmm.
And so you don't have to have a child in our program in order to receive our services.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
so, if there is if adults are grieving and they want to get some support,
Mm.
they're welcome to attend our adult support groups as well. And the adults aren't broken down into ages, they're broken down into what the circumstances is behind the death. And so,
Gotcha, gotcha.
we
Okay.
started a COVID-19 support group. We have an all male support
Mhm.
group because men and women grieve differently.
Yeah,
Um, and so we have a group for parents who've lost an infant child, or
very
even
specific, yeah.
grandparents who are
Mhm.
now working with grieving children. Maybe the grandparents have now
Mm.
become the primary caregiver. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't, and listeners of this know this about me. I'm kind of a self help and self improvement junkie to an extent, right? I always want to keep growing, and I could, I personally am a big fan of support groups,
Hmm.
and seeking help from others and finding kind of that solidarity and fellowship with those who have maybe experienced a very similar thing. So if you're listening to this and you're going through a difficult time, there's resources out there, right?
Yeah.
A bit of a shift though. I do want to ask what are you all in what's your biggest need right now as an organization? What do you need from the community? What do you need, for me?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on because,
Yeah.
I think you need to spread the word. Yeah,
Mm,
people need to
mhm,
know that we are here
mhm,
and that we
mhm,
have services and they are free. We know that when there's a
mhm,
death in the family, finances are uncertain, and so
mhm.
we certainly don't want to burden somebody who is seeking help to financially have to come up with the funds to be able to support it. So with that being said,
Yeah.
we have to pay for our services somehow. And so,
Yeah. Makes
so
sense.
we look to the community for their financial support.
Mhm,
And so, we work with foundations for grants. We work with individual donors who support us, and
mhm,
we work with businesses who support us as well. And so, those are the three prongs or the three legs typically of a nonprofit as far as revenue goes.
mhm,
The other one is earned income. And so, like for us, that will be coming from the rent that we're receiving from the wellness practitioners and the other nonprofits.
gotcha.
But we always are looking for ways to, share our story. And then if that story touches your heart,
Mhm.
ask that you help to support us financially.
Yeah,
So people
absolutely.
can support us in different ways. They can go online to our website at childrensgrief.org and just make a donation. We have a really cool thing going on right now
Mm,
where we are raffling off a half-acre lot of land in Rio Rancho.
wow,
So
that's really awesome.
we had a donor. So this is how people can help. We had a
Uh-huh.
donor donate the land to us, and they wanted to do this raffle to raise money to help with our renovation costs. So the
That's
tickets are
amazing.
$50. We're hoping to sell 1,000 tickets. So we're
Mhm.
hoping $50,000 to go towards the renovation costs. And it's
Yeah.
kind of a fun, unique way to be able to raise that support.
I mean, I
We
want
have our
all these
capital
links
campaign.
and all this information. I'm gonna share the heck out of it
Yeah,
too. But yeah,
please do. But so
yeah.
you know what? So people can help support us in a lot of different ways. And if there's
Mhm,
businesses who want to get involved with us, that's great. One of the things that we're exploring is some of those um, corporate responsibility partnerships. So, looking for those local businesses who want to come up with a way where they can help provide us with proceeds on an ongoing basis. So,
mm,
we
mhm.
recently connected with a local coffee place in town,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they're selling bags of coffee for us that are specially blended for the Children's Grief Center, and
Amazing.
we're
Okay.
getting proceeds from that.
From
So,
the sales of that. Okay.
yeah. So something that doesn't take a lot of resources,
Mhm.
it benefits us, it benefits them. We are collaborating together to get the word out,
Hmm.
and it's a
Hmm.
great partnership, and so we're looking for more of those partnerships.
This all sounds very amazing. I mean, the more we can draw attention to this, the better. If you're listening or watching this, I mean, I encourage you. No, I'm asking you, and I'm telling you to go do it. Go donate. Go buy a raffle ticket. Right? You may get like a fifth. Was it quarter acre? Is that what you said?
It's a half
Half
acre
the half
lot,
acre
a
lot for
half
fifty
acre.
dollars.
Yes, for $50. And so it's undeveloped. I want to be transparent. It's undeveloped, so there's no utilities. But the great thing
Oh,
about this property, and again, all the details, the
right.
address, Google Maps, everything is online, is that there is civilization up quickly approaching. So,
I mean,
it's not like
the
it's,
margin on that flip is going to be huge, people. So
yeah.
buy tickets.
So the owner
Yeah,
has given the value at $5,000. A couple of real estate agents have told me it's more, but I'm going with what the donors told me. So,
see, so
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I quick anecdote. My dad in the early '80s was told to buy land out where Rio Rancho is now, and he said nobody's ever going to live out there. And recently
it's
he told me
huge. It's growing.
he was kicking himself because he could have bought, I mean, I don't know how much it was, but a ton of land out there, and he didn't do it. This
Yeah,
is your opportunity to do it, right?
yeah,
So I mean, I'm
yeah.
gonna buy tickets. I
Well,
for
I
sure am.
think that I think what's going to happen
Hmm.
is I don't think that it's even going to, I mean, obviously it can be a lot that you could build on, but I have
Hmm.
a feeling that there's going to be a builder who's going to want to build, and they're going to
Commercial,
see
whatever.
that
Hmm.
that lot is privately owned, and
There you go.
maybe make you a great offer. Who knows? I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not, this has nothing to do with me promising the
If
winner
anything,
anything.
yeah, yeah. You have land to
Susie
your name.
said a builder's going to approach me. I have no idea.
You've
I'm
never been
just
yeah,
speculating.
you're right. You've never been able to kind of. This is a very good deal. This is a very good
Yeah,
deal, and you're doing it for a good cause. So keep that in mind as well,
yeah.
Susie. You are a saint. Your halo shines brightly. I really appreciate you
Thank
doing
you.
this work, not just for the organization, but for the community that I live in as well, and your community as
Yeah.
well.
Mhm.
Um, share the links. People, if you're listening, watching, there's no shortage of ways for you to contribute. So go out there, get out there, and do it.
Mhm.
And then let me know if you have any questions, people. Susie, we're going to debrief real quick, but if you guys are listening or watching, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
doing so. Remember that we love you guys, and that there's nothing that you can do about that. Bye.